road along as she was waiting on the customer.
Over and over and over again, he kept saying.
It's just accurate.
He kept telling her that. Killed me. You have a way with words, my darling. Spent 92 years on this earth.
I'm just now getting acquainted with myself. Someone said that I was Thomas Guy, but it was not on my birth certificate.
That's true.
I had a no-name birth certificate.
It's just, what would
That's
it
true.
say? What does it say? What would it say on it?
No-name Guy.
Really?
Yes.
No kidding.
The doctor who delivered me, of course, at that time all the deliveries were in the home.
Yeah.
You didn't go to the hospital. He did not have my name, obviously, when he went to put the birth certificate on record, so that's what they...
So it actually says no name?
No-name Guy.
Oh, man.
But later in years, I went to get my birth certificate and found that out. And before my mother passed away, I got her to give me a
Here it is.
some kind of certificate
An
certifying
affidavit or
that
something?
my name was Thomas Guy.
Did that make your legal name up until then no name?
So it changed. It is now on record.
Yeah,
Thomas Guy.
that's impressive.
So I'm no name originally.
This is no name in Mary Alice got here.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah.
And 1923 is the year, and of course a lot has happened since then.
I think you ought to tell them about how your parents met. I think that's a very fascinating
This just
story.
listed on TV and it
Well,
was 21. It wasn't
my
25 and then 2.
father taught school,
21,206.
and my mother was a student in the school. She was a senior high schooler. And they apparently got to liking one another quite well. And we wound up marrying her when she was 16 years old as a student. And then came along my oldest sister, Elizabeth, Beth we called her. She was 4 or 5 years older than I. And then my sister Rachel, that we called Jo or Josephine. She didn't have a middle name, so we called her Rachel Josephine. And then I came along as the third one in September of 1923. And I was followed up with a surprise brother in September of 1929, Reagan E.
Kind of like this.
Both my sisters and brother are both deceased now. And I'm still hanging around here at 92.
You don't dare do anything else because I'd kill you.
Someone asked me, I forget who, what was the first thing that I can remember as a child.
That was Patrick.
First thing that I can remember is I must have been, I don't know, I was old enough to know that my great-grandmother existed, and we were visiting, and I was to be put to bed because I was a little one, and they were going to put me in bed with my great-grandmother. But my uncles all teased me a great deal, and they told me that she had false teeth, and they would fall out sometimes. And if I got in bed with her, I had to be careful because her false teeth might jump out and bite me. That's the first thing that I can remember in my lifetime. And I am told that my brothers never did cease to tease and aggravate me,
Well, tell him you had this older half brother.
because every summer I would go stay with my maternal grandmother, Mama Gent, and of course she had about 5 sons, and they were all there, and they all teased me. So they got a kick out of that.
You,
What do you want to know
you
now?
forgot to mention your older brother, Clarence.
I did have an older half-brother, Clarence, that was born to my dad's first wife. She died at childbirth, and his grandmother actually raised him, so he never did live with us in our family, but I was with him a lot and knew him quite well. We spent a lot of time together. I was very shy. I would not talk to anyone that I didn't know. But my teacher-to-be lived down the street from me. I knew her real well. And when I went into first grade, she was my teacher. But when it came my time to read a little out of the book, she would come sit in my seat with me and get real close, and I would whisper the words to her from the book. And that's the way I learned my reading in first grade. She was a real sweet lady, and I did a lot of things. I mowed their yard, and her husband became a commissioner candidate politically, and I drove him around. I learned to drive when I was 12, 13 years old. In fact, I got my driver's license when I was 13. First year that Texas required licenses was in 1936. But I drove him around so he could hand out his cards and try to get people to vote for him. But I started saying one of the first things I can remember was that back in those days they had what they called all-day picnics, and they were usually in July. But my teacher was going to this all-day picnic, and she was going to take me with her. So my mother bought me some short pants and shirt and a little cap, and I dressed up in this short pants cap, and that was my attire to make this all-day picnic with what was to be my school teacher. And those are the two things that I can remember vividly.
That's so interesting to me that you were that shy. You know, especially that you married her.
Yes, and then the main person that really aggravated me most was the doctor. And we had one doctor in town. He had a little office there in town. And every time he saw me, he would try to get me to say something. And I wouldn't do it. And the main time I could remember, I was going to school, and I stopped in the store to get something, I don't remember, a pencil, I guess. But he was in the store, and he sort of cornered me. And he told me, he says, in order for you to pass by me, you've got to say something, and then I'll give you a quarter. Well, I said, hello and bye, and he gave me the quarter. I took off. That's the only time I remember my first word with him. But But I was a very shy person in my early years. And then somewhere along the way, I kind of got out of it.
What'd y'all do when you were kids? What kind of playing?
Our front yard at home was good size, but it actually was a baseball field. We turned it into one. And all the kids would come over to our house to play baseball.
That's magical.
And
It's a different
We-
time.
we had 2 big sycamore trees in the front yard. And they were placed such that one of them happened to be first base and the next one was second base. And third base, we just had sort of a bag or I'm not sure what now. But that's how we made our field. And of course, the street, which was early on, was just a dirt street. And cars could not go very fast, but cars back then couldn't go but about 30 or 35 miles an hour anyway. But when they bat the ball out into the road, people were always aware that we were playing ball there, and they would slow down or stop if the ball was in the street and wait till we got it out. So that was our early on sporting events. And my best friend and I, as we got a little older,
What was his name?
A.J. Pruitt. He was a year older than I. He was in another grade higher than I, but we were very good friends. We would go fishing and spend the night out on the creek banks, but we'd always have a couple of black guys, our good friends, go with us. As far as we were concerned, they were just another friend. But they sort of looked out after us. And we would spend the night on the creek, bait our hooks, catch our fish, and enjoy it together.
Wasn't there a black guy who worked for you? Worked for the family?
When I was a kid,
Yeah. What
I
about
was
him?
very young. We did have a black farm hand called, you wouldn't believe this, but his name was Lemmickay.
Lemon
I don't know
cake?
how he spelled it, but it was
Lemmickay.
Lemmickay.
Okay.
And
I heard lemon cake.
Yeah, I thought cake.
he worked on our farm, but we had a little room in the back of the house with a little cot in it, and we would sleep there at night. But I was telling my mother and daddy I wanted to sleep in the same room with him. And it didn't bother me that he was black. I didn't realize there was any difference. But they never would let me actually sleep in the room, but I would spend a lot of time with him.
Wasn't there a mule?
Pardon?
A mule? Didn't you tell a story about a mule? No?
I had a mule named Red, but that was my farm mule.
Old Red.
I did a lot of plowing. I did a lot of the farm work. My dad was a mail carrier, and he was usually on the route from about 10 till 2:30. And when there was work, he would plow till he had to go on the route, and then I would take over and do the rest of the plowing till he got home. One time I got in trouble with it, though. I wanted to go to I was older, I wanted to go to a basketball game that was being played, sort of a tournament, I think. And he wouldn't let me go. He wanted me to plow a crop of peas that we had planted. So I plowed it, but I plowed enough that I covered most of them up. Just out of resentment, I guess. The only thing is, when he got home and saw it, I had to go out there with a rake and uncover all of them. So that was my penalty for that little stunt.
That's good.
My father's father, Grandpa Benjamin Floyd, my middle name was from him. My first name is from my maternal grandfather. His name was Thomas Edward. So I got Thomas from him and Floyd from my paternal grandfather. Before my grandfather Benjamin Floyd died, he told, I was going to tell you about let me tell you about the watch first.
Okay.
He had a pocket watch, and he wanted me to have it. But before he died, he went out to feed the cattle or something. Anyway, he dropped it out of his pocket, and a cow apparently stepped on it. Anyway, it badgered it up pretty good. And anyway, when he died, I told his sons, I think Alan was actually the one that had it, that I was supposed to get it according to my grandfather. So he took it to a jeweler, watch repairman, and had it repaired, and then gave it to me. And then at some point in time, I believe I passed it on to Jerry, since he was the
Still got it.
next of kin there, and he still has the watch in his possession. But then when time came for graduation from high school, everybody, of course, wanted a class ring. But my dad did not want me to have a class ring. He said, you'll wear it a year or two and then you'll throw it away. You don't want to wear it anymore. And I think that you ought to have some other kind of ring. My Uncle Webb was a jeweler, so he had my Uncle Webb to make me a ring with the letter G on it, a couple little diamonds on it. So I agreed to accept that, and I wore that ring for years and years. And then I put it aside, kept it for a number of years, and then I decided that would also should be passed on to Jerry. He
And I
had it.
still wear it.
He had it
He does.
shaped up and is still wearing it, I believe.
Don't forget the story about the ukulele.
I thought of another little incident way back when I was 4 or 5 years old, I guess. But I always wanted a pocket watch. I'm not a pocket watch, a pocket knife. And I did not have it. But on birthdays, one of my aunts always remembered us with a little gift. And she always had them wrapped in the prettiest packages. He always wanted to get a gift from her because it was pretty, no matter what was in it. Anyway, one of my birthdays, she came along with a little package, gave it to me, and it had a pocket knife in it. I have never forgotten that.
That's cool.
You have to give me a minute. Let's see, we wanted to talk
I
about
missed what happened.
a little
Tell me later.
band that my half-brother and a few of his friends formed a little Western band, I guess you'd call it, the guitar and a fiddle, and my half-brother was the one that played the fiddle, and my dad bought me a ukulele, which for some Christmas present, as I recall. But anyway, when they would go on weekends, they usually somebody would invite them to their house to play, and I would go with it. And I learned the chords on the ukulele, but I could not sense when to change the chord. So a good friend of mine, which I was telling Mary Alice about a few days ago, Jerry Walker from Laneville, was the guitarist, and I would sit by him, and he would punch me when it was time to change chords, and that way I played in the band with my
That's great.
with my ukulele.
And later you got me a ukulele, but I knew when to change the chords.
I just could not sense it. And by the way, that little band, these boys that were older than my half-brother, he had 2 or 3 friends, but they were pretty smart cookies, really. And they had equipment that they sneaked off into a little shed there in town, and they actually broadcast on the radio. You could pick it up locally, it wouldn't go over 10 or 15 miles maybe. And it was illegal because they didn't have any license to be broadcasting. But on Sunday afternoon, they would go out and get in that little room with the radio broadcast, and you could pick it up. But they got in a little trouble on that and they shut it down. Let's see.
Cool.
My girlfriend in high school. Elizabeth Hayes.
Elizabeth Hayes.
And one Christmas I had enough little money, I don't know where I got it, but I bought her a little necklace for $8 or $10 probably, and it gave it to her as a little gift. And we dated, we'd go to have parties on weekends. And I was one of the few people that had a car. I drove, so my dad would let me have his car to go to the parties. Nobody else in town could do that. I was one of the few. But I would pick her up and we'd go to the parties, but we never did get close enough for a kiss. Until we went to the reunion, and she was in the kitchen working on something, and I went up to her and grabbed her and told her I never did get to kiss her when we were dating, but I was going to do it now.
How many years later was that?
That we were married.
Yeah.
That was
It was that long. That's how I knew the story. I was there.
That's funny.
She's a lovely woman.
Anyway, she responded very
What
nicely.
class reunion?
Floyd Guy.
Oh, that is a guy thing, yes.
Yeah.
What class reunion was that? Do you remember? I don't. And I had to make him go.
I do not. That, let's see, we were living in Austin. And I guess that was
Yeah, alright.
probably about the
Yeah, but in 50 years.
40th, probably.
No.
45th.
Oh, it couldn't have been the 40th. We were married.
I know we were married.
Yeah.
That would be 85, and we were married then.
Oh, maybe so.
I think it was the 40th anniversary reunion. Anyway, it was in Laneville, and it was
Fortunately, her dad was dead, so we couldn't kill him.
a sideline to that was that it was in the house that one of our my classmate, Mary, what was her? Irwin was her last name. Mary Beth Irwin, I believe. Anyway, it was a house that I had helped build because my Uncle Ray did the brickwork, some of the brickwork, and I would mix mortar and carry the mortar to him to lay the bricks. So I actually helped build the house that we had 40 reunion in.
Tell him the population of the town when you were growing up.
199 was the population of Laneville, and I guess it stayed about there, and I don't know what it is now, maybe 198 since I left.
Yeah. There's not much there.
And I don't. Is there even a stoplight?
By the way, the old home is still there, although the original is not there, I should say. But my cousin David bought that place and restored the house pretty much as it was, as I understand. I have not been back there to see it, but
We need to do.
he lives there on the old farm place.
You might want it.
Now, let's get up a little further along the way. My dad wanted me to be a doctor. And
The medical school.
I didn't particularly want to be a doctor, but he insisted, pretty much pressed. And I took pre-med and went to the point of actually getting admitted to medical school here in Dallas. It's the first year that Southwestern Medical School opened. And I was a student there for a few months, and then I convinced him and myself that I did not need to be there. So I left, and I was not being drafted. That's World War II time, by the way. And I was in med school, or I would have been in military, because everyone was drafted at age 18 then. So as soon as I got out of med school, I went into the military.
But you need to tell about, you married Bonnie, you and Bonnie eloped. I think that's a hoot.
Yeah, before I went into military, Bonnie and I eloped.
Jerry and Betsy's grandmother.
We came to Dallas, and her uncle, who was a minister, married us. And then we were just waiting till my time for going into the military, I think, which was in October or November 1941 or two.
Two, it had to be two, because you didn't go in the service till 43, I know.
40 is in 43, 1943. Then, let's see, I went into military, had my basic training over here in Wichita Falls. And then I was wound up I was in the Army. And then I took some tests, and if you made high enough, scored high enough, they would transfer you to what was in the Air Force, Army Air Force.
Or the Army Air Corps or something.
Yeah. So I took a test and passed it and went into the Army Air Corps. So they sent me to Bowling Field, Washington, D.C. for a guard duty assignment. While I was there, my dad thought that he didn't want me in the guard duty section, so he talked to one of our congressmen, Lindley Beckworth, and suggested that he would like for him to use any political prowess that he had and get me in the medical unit. He was still working on me in the medical.
You're way good.
Didn't give up easy, did he?
So they called me in and says, "We don't like this, that your politician has requested that you be transferred, but we're going to do it."
Or else, huh?
So I went into the hospital unit and I became a surgical technician, worked in the operating room, kept the instruments sterilized, actually participated in some of the surgery, in the closing, suturing. The doctor was very easy to get along with, and he didn't mind my helping wherever I could, so I did. They also had a lovely little nurse that made it worthwhile being there to participate.
There you go.
She
Well, when you're in the Army, the woman is not only rare.
Yeah, but this is my first hearing this one. I thought I knew it all.
I just thought of it, but she was a very nice person. Of course, she was a lieutenant, and I could associate with her.
And you
because
were married.
I was a little private.
And you were married.
I was married, but we still got along real well.
You gotta work it. You gotta control your
Oh
environment.
my God, you came by it naturally.
Oh, that sounds like something I'd do. So now we haven't left the country yet.
Yes. Yeah, you're hankering for that nurse, or doctor.
I worked there for 6 or 8 months, and then I was shipped out to go overseas.
And there bends the story.
I went to, can't think of the port now that I left from.
On the East Coast.
Yeah, South Carolina.
Yeah, it was that one.
Newport News.
Newport News.
And we were, they had no shipments going over actually for us, but they had some boats that they were shipping a lot of equipment over on, and they had room for 100 or 2 soldiers. So they put us on these boats to go overseas. 4 or 5 of them. Trying to think of the big name of the boat now. But it doesn't come to me. Anyway, it was a fleet of 4 or 5 of our boats, and then we were surrounded by a fleet of destroyers, because the Germans were quite active with their U-boats at that time all the way from England over to the U.S., running back and forth. So they went along ahead of us to protect us just in case. But about halfway across, we had it was in December, and the Atlantic becomes very active during the winter months. And we had a huge storm that blew up out in the Atlantic. And our boats had a lot of heavy equipment on the decks, trucks, tanks, that kind of stuff. And the waves got so bad that we were tilting about 45 degrees each time it rolled. And we couldn't even stay in our beds because of the movement. And we did find out that we were speeding along, and the destroyer fleet had lost track of us. So they had us turn around and go back and try to find the fleet, the destroyer fleet, which we did. But in the meantime, it was so rough that we lost, I forget now, 4 or 5 of our people that serviced the deck. They went up on the deck to try to tie down the equipment better. And the waves were high, and it washed 4 or 5 of them off the ship.
Wow.
And where'd you land when you finally made it?
I was being a surgical technician. I was given the job of working in the medical unit because most of the crew that was on the ship as medics were sick from the seasick motion.
Duh.
Fortunately, it did not bother me, so I went down in the medical deck and worked, patching up wounds and scrapes and other damaging
Lots of puke
results.
in that.
Anyway, it took us 30 days, if you can imagine it, to get from Newport News to Versailles, France, because of the delays and working back and forth. So when we got to Versailles, France, they dumped us. That's where they wanted to go to get rid of their equipment. So they put us on a prisoner boat, an Italian prisoner boat, from Versailles down to Toronto, Italy. And we went from Versailles down to Toronto on a prisoner boat.
Archie. That's where Archie.
No food
Same place
except
that was where Archie
British
was.
crackers and tea,
Sure.
hot tea. And I found myself in the bathroom most of the time. Because anyway, we finally got down to Toronto, Italy, and we were supposed to go to Foggia, or back up to Naples first. Toronto up there, they had no way to get us there. But they finally figured out a plan. There was a freight train running from Toronto up to Foggia every day. And they had some empty cars on it. So they put us on these freight cars. About, I don't know how many. It wasn't about half of us. There was so much crowded, it was about half of us could lie down to sleep. And the other half would stay up till we slept a little, and we'd switch. They'd sleep and we'd stay up. Took us about 4 or 5 days to get up there on the freight train. We ate crackers and I don't know what else they fed us. I do remember the train was so slow that we did see an orange orchard on the side. And a bunch of us jumped off the train and grabbed some oranges and jumped back on. And that was our food. Anyway, got to there, and then they trucked us over to Foggia, and that was my base where I worked as a medic, surgical technician, mostly giving penicillin shots to Italians who had some kind of venereal disease.
Gonorrhea, baby.
Syphilis or gonorrhea, whatever. We'd have medical call every morning.
Yeah.
I met my friend that was there. He and I became very good friends, Vernon Pete from Indianapolis.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
we had a reunion years later, and Merrill and I went up there.
But before that, we were sitting down to Thanksgiving dinner and the telephone rang. And it was Vernon Pete who found you and wanted to talk to you.
Yeah, I'd kind of forgotten that.
No, I remember that. We were living in the first house here. And it was in the early 80s.
Anyway, we went
He
there
found
for a
me.
reunion, and
We did.
I got to see, and we spent quite a bit of time together.
We did.
I
Yeah.
remember one event, he and I in Italy, talking about our girlfriends. There was one of the girls was a maid, I guess you would say, helped clean up the facilities. But she invited us over for a Sunday lunch for meatballs and spaghetti. So we walked over there and we had a very good lunch. Her mother prepared us a good meal, and they were very nice.
They were so grateful that
It
the
was
Americans were
strictly
there.
up and up, and nothing, no more romancing there. We just that they wanted to do that for us. Then the Pacific War was going on. Japan did a few things. And they were going to, my bunch of, that I joined over there had been over there 3 years. If you can imagine that. 3 years overseas. And I was there, and several of us that joined were pretty much rookies, so they decided they were going to ship us back home, leave these 3-year-old people over there, and we waved bye-bye at them as we got on the ship and came home to go to the Pacific. But on the way, the war in the Pacific ended, so they still sent me up to Tacoma, Washington, which is where I was supposed to leave to go overseas to the Pacific. And I stayed there and worked in the hospital, doing surgical technician type work, pill pushing, taping and all that, band-aiding, until my time came up to be discharged. So I was discharged there, and I tailed it home.
And without that, you never would have been born, Miss Amanda.
Yes.
While I was in Italy, and we were sort of floundering around doing nothing, we had what was called R&Rs, rest and relaxation tours. And I went to Rome for a week's visit.
He got into the
I
catacombs too.
spent, got to visit the Vatican.
In the
I went
catacombs.
down in the catacombs, which is no longer permitted.
Yeah.
And then I went back home, went back to the base. That was my home then. And a few weeks later, they say, well, we've got some more opportunities. So I said, well, I'll go. So I went back to Rome again.
Like the Roma.
Then the enemy was pushed out of northern Italy, and so our base moved up further north into Italy. I was with an aviation engineers battalion, and what they did is built temporary airstrips for the planes to come and go. And as we moved north, winning people out of the enemy out of the northern Italy, we moved further up. But while I was doing that, I had an opportunity for another R&R, and we went over into Lake Maggiore, which is in the extreme north Italy. Most beautiful place you ever saw.
Years
Beautiful
later, I
lake.
went there.
Lovely. And
It is.
there's one Italian lady that was there, and she thought she needed to make me welcome.
Oh,
So sweet.
oh, darling.
So we spent the day together, and she showed me around the whole area, and
But he really loved your mom.
and then at the end of the day, we separated. She went home, and I got back on my truck to go back to my base. But and Mary Alice has been there.
Later, I went there. It was one of the places we'd both been. It was neat.
Yeah.
It was neat. Yeah.
That's one of my other fonder memories.
That's beautiful. Okay. What do we want to know? How we met?
Yeah, how you met?
Okay. I was widowed, and I came back to the States, and I came to Carrollton. I decided to put my children in private school because I'd heard terrible things about the public schools. While I was there, Debbie was in first grade. I met a gal who had a daughter in first grade as well. And we became friends. So we decided to take our little ones on a trip to Europe for a month. We went to England. We flew to England. While we were gone, Tom was talking to his friend who happened to be dating my friend,
I heard this part.
his boss. And he made the comment that Barbara was in England for a month with this crazy widow. I don't know what they were talking about. Anyway, when we came back to the States, I had taken gobs of pictures, and Barbara and I decided to get together so I could show all the pictures I'd taken. And they had invited Tom to join us. So he did, and I came, and I walked up to him, I stuck my hand out and said, "Hi, I'm Mary Alice, you must be Tom." And the rest was history.
Oh.
What year is this?
1978.
Oh.
And I I took one look at that man and fell in love. You call it corny,
Yeah.
but I took one look at that man and fell in love. And the more I knew him, the more I loved him. We had dinner. Barbara got drunk. Leo took her home. And I was stuck at this apartment with Tom. And I had no place to go because my car was at Barbara's house. So I stayed there with him. And the longer I knew him, the deeper I fell in love. I knew it immediately. I don't know if he did or not. He will not admit that. I would like to think he took one look at me and said, wow, this gorgeous woman wants me? But he never has told me that. Anyway, it progressed in the natural way. And he retired from his job in Tyler. And when I came back to the States, I'd had a house built in Carrollton. I was living in it with Patrick and Debbie. And the progression was that he was going to move in with us. But first I had to ask Patrick and Debbie if that was okay with them. And they said, oh God, yes, please.
Well, and that would have made Dad 78, 20? Was he?
Oh no.
No, 30.
No,
30.
he was older than that.
30.
Because he was living in Tyler with Gail One.
Yeah.
Yeah. Who did not approve of me. I was, Dad had left your grandmother. And I had nothing to do with that. But I fell in love with him.
Mm-hmm.
I did. I couldn't help it. He was the gentlest, kindest man I had ever met in my entire life. And to this day, I still feel that way. I'm gonna cry. Anyway, we got married. The rest is history.
Yeah, I always love when Debbie tells the story because she was very sold.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
prior to our marriage, she mentioned she went up to him and she asked him, "Are you going to marry my mommy?" He said, "I don't know, you're going to have to ask your mom." Of course, I will say this about Debbie. Her dad died in an airplane crash. And about 5 days later, the minister of the of the American churches who lived in Geneva came to the house so that we could discuss the funeral. And she walked up to him and asked him if he was going to marry her mommy too. She was very shy. At 5, Debbie was terribly shy.
So not much has changed.
Yeah.
So not much has changed. No, not a bit. She's still the sweet, adorable little girl she was. Shy little girl she was. But she so wanted a daddy. And she wanted that man to be her daddy.
And where all did you end up living? Because I remember Austin and Plano.
Oh, gosh,
But-
we've lived, well, when we got, yeah, go ahead, you
I
start.
was gonna say that we left Carrollton and moved down to the lake.
No, we left Carrollton
we
and moved to Longview so you could be with your mother
Yeah.
before she died.
That was in the 80s, 1984.
No, because we moved back here in '84. We didn't live in Carrollton
I
then.
don't remember the date.
I don't remember the date either, but let me say, I made a decision. I picked out a lot. I had a house built, and I did it all by myself. And for a woman at that time, I was so dang proud of myself. And it was a nice house. I don't care what anybody says.
That one's on the lake?
No, this was the house I had built when I came back.
Yeah.
I had flown back to the States, leaving the kids, and I was in Europe when David died. And the kids and I stayed there until the end of the school year. But before that, I had flown back because I was looking for a house for us. And I couldn't find anything. So I had one built. And we lived with my mother and my brother until the house was built, finished in October. We came back in July and the house was finished in October. I was so proud of that place because it was something I did all by myself.
So it was in 80 we moved to Longview
Yes.
and stayed there till after my mother's death.
And I don't think he mentioned, but everybody called his mother, Mother Dear. She's a lovely lady. And she was Mother Dear to everyone. But, you know, our life has been crazy because we never believed in living in the same place for very long.
I
think, what is this, the third house we've lived in Plano? Or the fourth? The third. We've gone downhill each time. The first one was really nice, the other one was not so nice. And this one, yeah.
I'm trying to remember. That picture that you have of Patrick in the blue frame, was that in the Austin house? I think that was his 30th birthday.
That was in Austin, yeah.
Okay, yeah. That's, okay, then I remember.
And we had, I think we had one of Granddad's birthday parties in Austin.
One of the few that you're allowed to.
Well, every 5 years. That one was a surprise.
Oh.
That one was a surprise because Allison was a couple of years old. And Debbie and Bob, on their flight from California down to Austin, were teaching her the whole way to say, "Surprise, Poppy." And they came into the house and Allison says, "Surprise, Poppy!" And I'm crying and Poppy's going, "Huh?" I had no idea what
I said, "What are you doing here?"
And I'm bawling like a baby because my little baby granddaughter is saying, "Surprise, Poppy." It was so sweet. But Debbie and Patrick have loved that man from the day they met him. He has been Dad, their support. They have trusted him and loved him every minute of every day from the day they met him. I have been so proud.
Well, it took Patrick a while.
Well, Patrick was angry about everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. But look how he is now. Look what he's turned out to be. And, you know, I have been so proud of my kids. And so lucky. And I have you for a granddaughter.
It's quite the
Thank you for
little
And I remember,
Family tree
I mean,
lineage.
we were there the night you were born, you know.
Finally. Fine.